One of the most powerful tools at our disposal as human beings, a key piece of the puzzle which makes us human, is our imagination. Some say it's one thing that distinguishes us from animals. We have the ability to picture things in our mind that go far beyond reality, the reality that we see around us. We can create fantasy worlds with purple dragons and three-headed aliens and streets made of gold and all those different things. Imagination is also the initial source of creation. If I want to build a house or create a movie or plan my retirement, I first have to imagine what it would be like. Only then can I go about doing the necessary things to make my imagination a reality. Everything we see around us, this desk, this computer, this lamp, for example, began as someone's imaginative idea. One could even say that God had to imagine all of creation first, before it came to be the reality we see. Therefore, everything somehow reflects the mind or the imagination of God, including us human beings. Now, imagination can be a powerful creative force, which we can use to solve problems and create things that make our lives better and build community and relationships. But it is a two-edged sword. It can paralyze us in a straitjacket of fear. It can set us at each other's throats. It can destroy our physical and mental health and keep us from attaining all that we want, like peace, cooperation, community, and love. Because our imagination can help or hurt us, it's important to first of all be aware of how our imagination is working. Now, little children are not able to do that. They don't have that awareness a lot of times. They sometimes can't distinguish imagination from reality. That's why imaginary friends are real to them, as is the monster under their bed at night. Now, as adults, we like to think we're better able to distinguish imagination from reality, but sometimes we're not. Just think of going on a job interview or going on a first date. Without much concrete information, we're kind of left to imagine what the other person thinks about us. And it's easy to jump to the conclusion that what we imagine them thinking is, in fact, reality. And if what we imagine doesn't match the reality, it can cause us a lot of problems. Fear is a major factor in determining if imagination helps or hurts us. We can imagine an infinite number of things to be afraid of. Asteroids hitting the Earth, the zombie apocalypse, the super viruses, getting struck by lightning, getting mugged, being abducted by aliens, being punished by God, etc., etc. Fear is at the root of all the conspiracy theories out there these days, imagining what's all going on and taking that as reality. The more fearful a person is, the more apt they are to believe that reality matches their fearful imagination. This sets up a vicious cycle. It goes from imagining something threatening to fear of the threat, to concluding that the threat is reality, to more fear, to finding more imagined evidence of the threat, to more fear, and it goes on and on. When that happens, at that point in the person's mind, what they have imagined becomes identical to reality, and they become unwilling or unable to entertain the possibility that reality is any other way than what they imagine. When we're under threat, our bodies produce cortisol, a chemical that prepares us to fight the threat or run away from it. It's a built-in protective feature, very important. Once the threat is gone, the body chemistry goes back to normal. That's what happens to an animal like the gazelle as it escapes from the predator. We humans, however, are able to imagine constant threats. The body doesn't know the difference between imagined threats and real threats. So it produces cortisol constantly at the urging of the fearful imagination, whether the threat is real or not. Long-term high cortisol levels in the bloodstream burns out the body, leading to heart attacks, ulcers, high blood pressure, cancer, and a host of other physical and psychological problems. All the more reason to keep our imaginations from running away from us. How do we do that? Well, first of all, I think it's good to often remind ourselves that we can imagine much worse things than what usually happens. We can prove this, we can check this out by remembering what has happened in the past and how things didn't usually turn out as bad as we thought they would. The worst case scenario usually didn't happen, even though we imagined it might. It's also good to nurture a healthy skepticism about what we hear and see. A healthy skepticism means that we know we don't get the full picture from one news story or one piece of gossip. It prompts us to further investigation and information gathering before we conclude what is true, rather than quickly, and often mistakenly, settle on a certain view of reality. We can also consciously choose to imagine something other than the worst case scenario, which we often imagine. When we imagine something good happening rather than something bad, the body stops producing cortisol and begins producing a chemical called oxytocin. Now, oxytocin has been shown to be associated with elevated emotions like compassion, happiness, trust, joy, forgiveness, and empathy. Long term, this chemical is much more conducive to physical and emotional health than is cortisol. And lastly, as always, it's good to rely on our faith. It's good to trust that God has gotten us this far and will probably be there for us in the future. Nurturing that faith, in whatever way we do that, can help us harness the power of our imagination to create and bring life, rather than allowing it to imprison us in fear and isolation.